really deep into this. And Co-op Radio does a spring fundraiser, and to keep Métis Matters Radio live, we've been going on since 1989, folks. And I know most of you actually that are the older listeners that remember Ken Fisher, who was actually one of the original show hosts, and he also worked with Mark here for a good 20 years. And Mark had to put up with Ken for so many years. Anyways, but anyways, it became a really great program. People love following Métis Matters Radio. And so after Ken passed away, then the BC Métis Federation and Keith Henry and the strong support from the community asked me if I can help carry on, because I got the experience in radio, and I said I'd be honored. So when I carried over, and basically what BC Métis Federation doesn't want us to see us do is walk away and leave the show as it is. They want me to help me see if we can keep it going. And what we need to do is to help support us. And so we're doing our spring fundraiser up until the end of May. And so we're looking for your support if you want to become a member of the Co-op Radio, or if you just want to donate $10 per month, or if whatever you choose is wonderful for you, for all of us. And I want to thank everybody for also helping to donate that have already donated to our show, because the more we keep coming back, the better it is. And like I always tell everybody, even when I did a video recording earlier, I said, you know what, too bad I couldn't get 2 hours. I actually would run Métis Matters Radio for 2 hours, be no problem, because this is how crazy it gets when you keep on having a radio program going. And I know you guys, Darcy and Jason, you guys do the same thing. You're doing a fundraiser to keep your podcast going.
Yeah, that's right. We started, for podcasts it's a little more difficult, but we started a Patreon page on a Patreon page. Mm-hmm. And basically what it is we're offering some rewards and exclusive content for people who pledge starting at $1 and up.
Yeah.
And so it's a monthly pledge that people can make to help keep our podcast going. But we actually want to grow the podcast. We want to get the ability to get out to communities and actually do some live events and things like that.
Yeah.
And so every little bit helps us in that regard.
Do you plan, so you go out on location and you actually do interviews as well for your show?
That's the goal. The goal is to get out to, when there's an event, is to get out to the event, maybe talk to the organizers, get a little bit of more information about the event, talk to some people that are there, those kinds of things. But it's really hard doing it in between work and everything else, so we're hoping to get a little bit going so we can expand a little bit.
Let's talk about. I'm going to get ask Darcy or Jason. Sorry, ask Jason. Jason, when have you ever been on a location where you actually interviewed someone where they were criticizing or critiquing who's Métis and who's not?
No, not so much. No? I haven't. Darcy's really the traveling man.
Okay,
I'm kind of the call-in stay-to, but we find it is a lot in a lot of circles when you are at events and you are talking with people in crowds. It does come up from time to time. We've definitely talked to people who've been and in those kinds of situations where identity politics really does start to play, a significant factor, and people have, been really hurt by it.
What are the most, memorable interviews you've actually had on your show?
Well, for me, probably one of the better ones was I got a chance to sit down with Colleen Klein, and she's the wife of former Premier Ralph Klein out here in Alberta.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and I'm sure everybody from the late '90s remembers Ralph Klein.
Yeah, he passed from cancer.
Yeah, he did, and so and speaking of identity politics, she was a really good person to chat with about that because of her adoption records from, when she was an infant, however many years ago now, she actually was denied, or her and her family were removed from the MNA because they can't prove their paperwork.
Yeah.
So here they sit today with for all those years that she was the Premier's wife, she was a Métis and proud Métis, and everybody was proud of her being Métis, and then it was almost as soon as he left office, they were, you know what, your paperwork's not good enough and you're out. And it's really a shame because I think, you just see the impact it has on people, is this identity thing.
Yeah.
And so that was probably one of more memorable ones. But we've interviewed artists and local people who help in their community, M&A members, people like that. So I like them all. I kind of have an affiliation for the artist one because I always find it interesting to find out how artists became artists or how they did it full time. So those are the ones that are memorable for me.
Well, we do have some crazy people up in this area that are Métis entertainers and artists. We have JJ LaValle, who's originally from Manitoba. Some people call him Lavalley, how you want to say it. Wonderful fiddle player. We've got some really cool people up in this key. Let's see, we have the late Art Bird, who was also part of it. Rene Gervais, he's also here. Rene Theron, he's also here.
Yeah.
He's actually part of our BC Métis Federation board. So we have some really great fiddlers, and also including, who else we got here? See if you actually remember some names or know some names. Kathleen Nisbet. You ever met her?
I've never met her. I think I've heard her name, though. I've heard a few people mention her name.
Yeah, she's a fiddle player, and we also have Dallas Boyer.
Yeah, I've heard that name as well, yeah.
Yeah, and we've got some really... And I'm surprising everybody next week. Got some a new CD coming in from another good friend that... but I'm not going to say the name. This is going to be a surprise for everybody. But he's also another fiddle player, very well known across Canada, entertaining. And he just got an award just recently, so... I got to keep that a bit of a secret because it will be shared about that later on. Also, pardon me, I normally drink my water. I forgot my water. There is actually one thing that I like to do, and when you talked about most memorable moments, and we talked about Ralph Klein's wife, I had the same problem myself. For example, when I was up in Winnipeg, and my cousin. She was trying to get her Métis citizenship, and the Winnipeg Métis Association would not accept her Métis status. And yet, there's another Manitoba Métis Association that she went to, no problem.
Really?
Oh yeah, no problem. And yet, La Gemondier is actually part of that family background. But according to them, according to David Chartrand, he was saying, no, it's not good enough. You need more than that. Well, La Gemondier their cenotaph right next to Riel. What the hell? And La Gemondier actually is the grandparents of Louis Riel. So go figure that one out. I have no idea. But they turned her down. So what we end up doing was she ended up going to the other the other Manitoba Métis. No problem, got her citizenship. So, sometimes you have to jump over a hurdle to get, to find your status or get your citizenship. I keep forgetting status is First Nations, citizenship is Métis. We keep on hearing that all the time. And do you remember the time that the Métis were finally recognized by Parliament?
Yeah, well, I was pretty young then, but yes, I do. I've seen a lot of videos of it.
No, it was a brand new that came out. It was not even a couple years ago. The Métis were finally recognized in Parliament and government.
Yeah.
Okay, that was when everybody came running down the stairs. Oh my God, we got it! We're all known. And then what happened was, in the end, that particular recognition only affected just the Manitoba Métis, Saskatchewan Métis, and the Alberta Métis, but no one else gets anything else. Like they keep on saying, you have to be Red River, and going like, what the hell are you talking about? So,
well, I think you're talking about the Daniels decision.
The Daniels decision, yes, that's the Daniels decision.
Yeah, I think. See, that's the thing that bothers me about that is like, for what these guys are doing by saying Red River only now, Harry Daniels himself called that historic revisionism, because that's been happening since 1982. This whole Red River only thing, and it's just not true. But they're trying to revise the history so that they, I guess, accumulate that power. I don't know, but that's the sad reality of that is that wasn't meant to be a decision for all Métis, but now they're trying to use this historic revisionism to created for only a select few.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's sad. It really is sad. Considering how much they fought that case, and then to see them walking down the stairs like it was a big victory, it's almost painful to watch.
It is. I mean, in one way, I don't think it really did anything good for here in BC, unless you are Red River from, the families and territories. But if you were born and raised here, I feel bad for a lot of kids that if their families are not connected by that way by the Red River. Pardon me. That makes it even harder for them to, but now today, it's getting a little bit easier. Like they keep on saying now, as long as you can give as much proof as possible with your Métis background, because one thing I was actually told last night, or actually someone wrote to me and said to me that you had to have script. And if you didn't have script, you don't get your status. You get your citizenship. I'm going like, excuse me? A lot of the Métis back then also gambled their property away and sold their script. So how is it that we're to blame for your ancestors' mistakes?
Exactly, and I think Jason's got a lot of. He's done a fair amount of research on script, and
I think that to speak to script specifically, to talk to that about saying that your identity has to come from script paperwork, I think would be again a really reductive conversation in Métis identity politics that would further limit the amount of people who would even qualify for membership within the organizations at large that we like to call the cartel. So, if it had to go back to script paperwork and documentation, I think that'd be really dicey because we even have there's several First Nations bands in Alberta that actually ended up getting script and then reverted back to status. First Nations communities. So it really becomes a conversation of, colonial paperwork trying to verify Indigenous identity.
Yeah, because basically if you look at it, my throat is going crazy. Normally I haven't, like I said, drinking my water, I'm okay. Normally with the script, as far as I understand it, I mean, they were making a big deal about this. Basically, they call land.
Yeah.
But the Hudson's Bay Company was also involved by selling the property to other, like they was actually pull out territories, forcible signings, or mischievous signings, and I mean that's where Riel got involved to step in and say that you can't do this. So people tend to forget the history of that. They tend to walk away from that, where there's that mix-up. And I find that's kind of, people have to sit and think about it because they're not going to tell you that story. They're not going to say, well, here's what happened here. All they're going to say, well, you have to have script. Because not everybody knows about the Métis history. Not everybody knows about what really happened. I mean, I was in school. I remember, and when I lived in Brandon, I was going to school then. And I remember, do you remember some of the old? Do you guys ever come across any old Canadian history books, school books?
Every once in a while, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
In the 1960s, if you look in the original hardcover school book in Canadian history, it had everything from Frontenac, Champlain, you name it. That's Canadian history. Inside one page, it said Louis Riel.
Yeah.
It had 3 lines of Riel, and the first thing it says, he was a trader of Canada. Not trader as in trading goods. Trader, Traitor, traitor.
Yeah.
And I asked the teacher, what did he do wrong? She says, you don't need to know, it's not important. She said he was a bad person and this and this and this. So I said, no, I'll have to find out what happened. You don't need to know this. It's not important. Next page. Now, I really wanted to know. Third time I asked, I ended up being taken to the office and being strapped across the hands for asking too many questions. Now, the funny thing is, many years later, our kids today are not as much taught Canadian history. They're taught American history. Why? Yeah. Why are they taught American history? Why not Canadian history? What happened? For some reason, it's being shoved back. And are we becoming more Americanized? And is there some sort of deal that our country's become, we lose that prime minister, and then we have just a president, like a goofy one?
Well,
running this country?
I have to agree. I mean, I think we don't spend enough time learning about Canadian history, and I mean real Canadian history.
No.
And everything, it seems like everything from the East Coast right up to when Canada became the Canada that you see today is kind of almost glossed over. Mm-hmm. And I mean, you see that with everything. You see that with the residential schools, with the scoops, with the, things like this, the road allowance people. None of that is taught in school. Mm-hmm. And, my wife, she's First Nation, and she's a huge advocate for and working to try to get like K through 12 programming in Alberta schools. Because even my daughter she's in grade 5 now in public school, and she probably knows more about Riel than the teachers do.
Yeah.
And she's actually had teachers say, well, you know what? Why don't you just tell the class about this or that?
Yeah.
So it is. It's really sad. It's not being taught in school.
Well, the crazy part is, I'm actually the cultural director of Chief Métis Museum, so I teach Métis history. Yeah. And when we bring our museum to the schools, I teach the kids the history of the Métis. Not about Riel, because they don't want to talk about Riel. They believe if they talked about Riel, that it would be too violent for their minds.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, I didn't know we become dainty people to tell them the truth of what happened. But they think that it's going to hurt, bother, like it's going to do damage to the child's mind, corrupting them with violence. Well, excuse me, you guys are playing video games, shooting monsters, but you don't want to hear the story about the real truth about Riel?
Well, and
I think
go ahead, Jay.
I think it speaks a lot to the how we try to revisionize history, and we try to envision the settlers coming to indigenous lands of all sorts, right? That it was basically a peaceful agreement. Everybody got along, and it looked a lot like Thanksgiving dinner right across Canada. And so we try to make it so that it's palatable and easy to digest, and we avoid a lot of the hard conversations and a lot of the hard paths that really went on. We don't talk about, we don't talk about the starvation. We don't talk about, the clearing of the West through famine. We don't talk about reservation systems. We don't talk about, starvation on the road allowance. We don't talk about that in the past in a historical context, which really is detrimental because then we have no frame of reference for talking about the present day issues.
Exactly. So I feel it's really important that we need to get the word out to the truth. Now, what I decided to do in my classes, that I would teach about the Métis trappers and the voyageurs from the grades 3 up until about 5 or 6. Any seniors, okay, so anything from grade 7 up, seniors, then I can talk about Riel. And because the kids are prepared to deal with what's there, what real history was about. Yeah. The only thing that they ask us not to do is talk about spiritual history, what the Métis did do, because the first thing what the kids do at home, sometimes their misunderstanding, they think that we're trying to teach them about religion, and we're not. But we show them how we're connected to the earth just as much, because a lot of the Métis did live around or on a reservation with First Nations people. So they learned by the customs and traditions and language. Did you guys ever learn to do this in your life as well?
Well, for me, I have, because I have access to a lot of First Nations living around Calgary. Mm-hmm. My wife is First Nation, so I have a huge tie to that community. So I've done a lot of ceremonies. and been part of a lot of ceremonies. So I've been fortunate that way because I have access to at least 3 reservations right nearby, like 3 nations right nearby, and within a couple hours there's several more. So I've been fortunate that way.
What about you, Jason?
Well, because I was adopted, I came to it a little bit later in life, and I'm not as integrated due to the geography more than I'm fairly far away from any real reserve population. So it's kind of been a slower journey for me to be able to get to participate in ceremony and do those different kinds of things. But, that's the joy of life, I guess. Everybody's got to walk a different path together.
Mm-hmm. Okay. We're going to actually take a break. You guys want to hang on tight. I'm going to take a break. We're going to throw in a song here right now. And basically, I'm sure you guys know this song. It's coming up. It's called Whiskey Before Breakfast. Folks, you're listening to CFRO 100.5 FM, Métis Matters Radio on your nearest co-op radio.
Hey students, summer's coming soon and it's time to start thinking of summer jobs. Vancouver Co-op Radio is now hiring students through the Canada Summer Jobs Program. Do you dream of attending music festivals and cultural events this summer? We need a community engagement coordinator. Want to get paid to record and edit audio podcasts? Do you see yourself presenting training workshops? How about becoming our community radio training coordinator? See the full job postings online at coopradio.org or call 604-684-8494 extension 226. We have room for just 4 students, so you'd better apply fast. That's coopradio.org or 604-684-8494 extension 226.
She's rich, she's nice, bring your friends and we'll all go into town.
Hey, you listen to CFRO 100.5 FM. I love that commercial, that little support service. That was really good.
I guess promo is safe.
Yeah, I remember dancing to that song when I was back in the 70s.
1970, I think.
Yeah, 1970, yep. And actually, that same song, I remember, is played on an old show. Let's see. There was the guy used to say, I am the Wolf Man.
I am the Wolf Man, yeah! That guy, trying to be Howlin' Wolf, actually.
Well, that's a different kind of wolf. There's Wolfman Jack, and then there was Billy, what was his name? Billy Van, who actually played the wolf, and that was, oh my God, that was that old show, haunting show. He had the Dracula look and the Frankenstein. Frankie. Brucey, they called it Frankenstein Brucey.
Oh, that Bobby Van.
House of Frightenstein.
Frightenstein. Yeah,
House of Frightenstein.
Bobby Van.
Yeah,
he was part of the Hudson Brothers show too.
Yeah.
The Hudson Brothers Razzle Dazzle Show. He was part of that too.
Yeah. But there isn't actually the song you actually heard earlier, "Whiskey Before Breakfast," is actually played by Renee Theron and actually Renee Gervais. So now we like to do some crazy things, folks. Add it in, take it out. Add it in, take it out. So tonight we have some really great guys actually that have been doing podcasting for the last 55 shows, and their show title is called "The Jig Is Up," and they have their own radio program, and they're based out of Calgary. And our guests actually is Darcy and Jason, and these guys have been kicking up a notch. I've been listening to some of their shows, and I'm telling you, when you listen to Darcy and these two and Jason, when you get these two guys together, it's like, holy crap, they're like us over here. When we start doing a show, you're building up, intense, because it gets kind of tense. And, it's better than just having a teepee. It's more like tense.
It's like a play on words. Intense and intense.
Intense. We're going intense.
Intense.
intense. So, have you guys, Darcy, have you, or are both you guys, any of you guys actually do you have any your own black powder tent or your own teepee? Do you ever go camping yourself?
Well, I think Jason has his own teepee. I don't have any of that stuff, but we do actually run. We started last year a Métis cultural camp.
Oh, okay.
And it's a 5-day land-based camp. This year we moved it down to Calgary just because there's more people around Calgary. And so this year we've got 40 people going out to our camp, and it's a Métis focus. It's open to anybody, but it's family focused and Métis focused. So we're going to do traditional, Métis games for kids. We're going to do, some hiking and some basic camp skills and connect with the land. And we started that last year, and this will be the second year this year.
So the kids with the games, are you making those kids carry 100-pound sacks of grain, on their backs to run and that sort of thing?
Oh yeah, for at least the first half of the day, minimum.
Yeah.
Yeah. You got a canoe 75 miles in the evening.
Whoa, that's pretty good, man. That's pretty good. Walk the portage, man.
Absolutely.
Learn how to pick up your own canoe.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's cool, and that's nice to see that. I remember we were trying to make it as like to be traditional as possible for the kids to learn what it was like for the Métis to do their own kind of Olympic games, so to speak, Métis games. And so we would pretend that kids are actually carrying 100-pound sacks. So we had these big potato sacks, and they're full of foam, and they have to carry them on their back. And so these kids are running with these giant foam bags. They look like bags of grain. And it's funny to watch them. And one of the games that we did make them do, they had to carry, each of them had to have a spoon, and on inside that spoon they had to put an egg in it, and you had to carry that spoon and egg all the way across to the next person and back, and if you drop that egg, that's it, right?
Yeah.
That's the funny part. Now with the adults had to carry the spoon in their mouth with the egg, and I've seen the eggs. And it has to be transferred somehow over to the next person's egg or spoon with their egg. And I've seen eggs get hit on the head. Like, it's funny as heck. I mean,
oh yeah,
this is our typical Métis games. So
yeah, absolutely. No, they're a lot of fun.
Yeah. So now I want to tell you guys a story. And now I'm not sure if you guys remember this at all, but do you know the history of the cabin? Where basically, for example, if the Métis person or First Nations person went hunting and they had their own cabin in the bush, if a non-native person shows up, they can actually take that cabin away from them?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was actually a Hudson's Bay law or rule that if you actually, say you're a hunter or a prospect or whichever, and you had a cabin, and you decide to go away for, say, a couple of weeks to do all your goods, you come back, and if a non-native person shows up and he's actually living in your cabin, you cannot take your cabin back because they can make the stake, and that still existed to this day.
I'm not surprised. That makes total sense.
Yeah. Now, there is another law that has never been lifted that relates to the Métis, and there actually was a bounty on Louis Riel, as well as all the people that are involved in the history with Riel. So if anybody who's related to all those men that were shackled, which one of my best friends, great uncle and great grandfather, both were in the shackles, which his name is Dale Haggerty. They said that the bounty still has not been lifted to this day. John A. Macdonald put a bounty on all the Métis, including the women and the children, to have them all assassinated.
Wow.
And so we decided to ask the government, which Harper was in government then, asked him if he can remove the bounty. He refused.
Yeah.
He said, Macdonald is our hero.
I'm not surprised.
I'm going like, okay, well, two conservatives, of course.
Yeah. Yeah, he did so much good stuff for Indigenous people. That's really surprising.
Yeah. So, yeah, right. He kept us in the lurch.
Yeah.
But I thought I'd share that with you guys because I thought you might like that, to hear that story. But these are some of the stories of the Métis things that never were resolved.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so you have to look it up. So your upcoming programs, what's going to be happening in the future now? What are you going to be talking about maybe next week or the week after?
Well, we're going to be, we continue to go, we do a lot of current events because we try to take what's happening in the world and see how that affects Métis people, even if it doesn't seem on the surface like it's Métis focused. So we're going to continue with that. But we are working on a series of episodes all related to areas of the country where they purposely kicked out Métis people to make a national park or make a provincial park. So we're actually working on a series of interviews with people from those areas. I'm happy to say, like Moccasin Flat up by Fort McMurray, the Jasper,
1910.
Jasper Parking,
the
Mountain Métis, and so we're going to expand that across the country. We've got a few other places in other provinces that we're going to be looking at and lining up interviews. So we're hoping to do a whole series on that, which will be very exciting. And then we're just looking at more interviews with interesting Métis people doing some really cool things out there.
A couple of months ago, I did that story on the Métis that were kicked off out of Jasper National Park. A lot of them migrated there, and yet other non-native people were allowed to still stay there. And that didn't make any sense. So I guess right now to this day, a lot of the families are fighting to get that territory back.
Well, that's just it, and that kind of thing happened. It happened in Saskatchewan. It happened in Quebec. It happened it happened from coast to coast to coast. And specifically to Métis people. I mean, we know that the territories were taken from the First Nations people, absolutely. But there were a lot of Métis people where they had communities and they were thriving, and then they were eliminated, and now there's a park there. And so, it's just a sad part of Canadian history. But again, these are stories you never hear about, really. Yeah. We also got something else I want to share with you guys, and that's all to do with, you guys remember the gold rush then back in the 1850s, and Barkerville is very well known for its gold claim, and just like California, right? Now, I'm not sure if you guys know this, but the Métis back in the 1857, were actually called the Overlanders. And I've heard that,
Yeah, they weren't called Métis at first, but there was well over, just listen to this, there's well over 200,000, 200,000 or 2,000? 2,000 Métis left the East Coast, all the way from the Nova Scotia region, brought their Red River carts across to migrate, and took them 3.5 months to get to Barkerville. But out of the 2,000, only 230 made it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. For the gold rush. But they didn't call them the Métis back then. They called them the Overlanders. And that's all part of Barkerville's history. And there's quite a story in that, because you're following the Caribou Trail all the way down, and it carried all the way from Barkerville all the way up to Victoria here in British Columbia.
Wow.
So, if you guys ever want to do a story on that, I recommend it. You'll get a lot of, because I already know, because I went to residential school, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a lot of things that did create a lot of stories, a lot of misunderstandings, and so we need to try to do, like your voice and my voice, and as well as Jason's. It's important for all of us to be heard all over the media. Like you guys are in Calgary, based at Calgary. We're based in Vancouver, and then I just finished talking to a friend of mine in Winnipeg. We have another Métis radio station. So there's 3 of us to start off with, which is great. And there needs to be more of us with a voice. So we're looking forward to get more people to hear our voice and your voices to do the show. So what made you decide to call the show The Jig Is Up?
Well, it was funny because we were actually thinking of names, and for our YouTube channel, we called it Keeping It Real. Which of course is kind of funny, but the Jig Is Up just kind of popped into my head. It's kind of a saying that people know, but yet, and then when you apply it to a Métis person, it's just got that double entendre. So it just kind of fit. I was just sitting there one day, and literally it just popped in my head, and I went, hey, that's a great name. Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of come to mean like, that's where we're gonna come up with, we're gonna do everything. We're going to do every topic, and then when we're done, we're done. It just seemed to fit.
Have you guys ever got a lot of response from your podcasts that, some people are going like, I'm mad at you because you talked about this story?
Oh, yeah. We've gotten, I have to be truthful. We haven't gotten a lot of negative feedback. We have gotten a ton of positive feedback, which has been really cool. And probably... it's something I don't think either Jason or I even ever expected to get the kind of response we have. You do still get the odd person who's like, you guys are all wrong, and you're not even real Métis, and rah-rah.
Okay, who said that? Yeah. Who said that?
There's a few. But you just kind of ignore them and move on. I mean, it's one of those things where when you get 10 emails saying how much impact the show's had on people, and then you get one person saying something negative, you got to just look at the stats there and go, you know what, that one person doesn't matter.
No, but you're always going to have someone who's going to, let's put it this way, if they're listening to the show and they're critiquing you, that means they're listening.
Exactly.
Right? Exactly. Because if they weren't listening, they wouldn't be critiquing you.
No, and we never did the show to please people. We're not a show to please any organization or government or anything. It's, this is a grassroots show, and what we want to do is have Métis people get their voice heard. Mm-hmm. And you can't do that by, being a shill for these, what we call the cartel or the government of Canada. And because they, with every deal they do, there's some sort of backhanded thing that Métis people have to pay for. And that's what needs to get heard.
Yeah. So, would you guys like to say to our listeners before we close?
Jason, what do you got? Any final thoughts or comments?
Well, I appreciate us having us on your show. It's great to be able to connect, and spread the message and network. I think that there's a lot of issues that need to get exposed, and I think the more we can get the message out and build listenership across all these different platforms, the more we can stay connected as one people across the land.
Well, I appreciate it.
Yeah. And I want to thank you, too, for having us on. It's been very interesting. This is our first radio interview, so that's really cool.
That's not the first time. I'm going to have you guys back here again. You watch.
Absolutely. Be happy to come back. And I just want to say to everybody, if they want to check out our show, just Google search the Jig Is Up podcast. It's the first thing that comes up. We're on iTunes, Google Play, you name it, we're on it. And you can find the show. And there's, like I said, we've got 55 episodes now, so...
Well, you never know. We can probably end up turning this into a Métis round table How's that sound?
Yeah, that's right. Hey, that'd be great.
Hey, they might work. Okay, folks. Coming up next, we have our another song to finish off this evening. The song is called St. Anne's Reel, and it's all to do with the Alberta dust, and it's written by Riel Abashan, and the fiddle is Renee Theron. I want to thank everybody for listening tonight. You're listening to CFRO 100.5 FM. See you guys next week. You're listening to Metis Matters Radio. I am your host, Derek White Sky Cloud. Take care, folks. Big John McNeil.